Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Quest for Success Starts with School Breakfast, hosted by the Food Research and Action Center. I'm Steve Hayward, FRAC's Communications Manager. Before we begin, I'd like to cover a few brief housekeeping items. We expect this webinar to run about 60 minutes. We are recording the presentation and will send the recording and slides in a follow-up email. Closed captioning is available. To turn captions on, click Show CC in the bottom taskbar and select English as the spoken language. At the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions and answers. To ask a question at any time, please use the Q&A tab, also in the bottom taskbar. With that, I'll pass it off to Erin Heisem, Senior Child Nutrition Policy Analyst at FRAC. Take it away, Erin.
Thanks, Steve, and welcome everyone to FRAC's Thursday webinar. The Quest for Success Starts with School Breakfast. Next slide, please. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with FRAC or a new friend of ours, we are the leading national nonprofit organization working to end poverty-related hunger here in the United States. We do that through a variety of ways: training and technical assistance, presentations such as the one we're on today, conducting research, and doing a lot of advocacy at the local, state, and federal level. Next slide, please. But we're here today to really celebrate school breakfast and National School Breakfast Week. We know that the school breakfast program is pivotal to student success. We hope that you've been joining us all week long in our celebrations, celebrating the importance of this program, celebrating the students who participate every day, the schools who implement innovative breakfast models, and mostly the school nutrition professionals who make it happen day in and day out. We applaud every school nutrition professional out there, from that frontline cafeteria worker up to the central office, up to the state agency and USDA, for really working to make sure that our students are well nourished and set up for a successful school day. Next slide, please. As always, we have a lot to talk about and not always a lot of time to talk about it. So I'm going to start off today giving some background on school breakfast, talking a little bit about what some issues are facing schools, what some issues are facing students, and what we can do to ensure students are set up for academic success so they can start their day well nourished and ready to learn. But the majority of today's webinar is really going to center on a panel discussion with some of our nutrition and education experts. We're going to have a casual discussion on how these professionals are bringing students healthy school breakfasts every day and ensuring that they have access to the nutrition that they need to be successful in that classroom. As Steve mentioned, you can enter questions at any point throughout the webinar. There's the Q&A feature on the bottom taskbar of your screen. You can type your questions in, and at the end of our panel discussion, we'll get to those. And then I will share some of our breakfast resources. Next slide, please, Steve. So there is a lot of issues facing schools today. You know, as a parent, I often send my child off to school and think, yay, they're going to get educated. And that might be like the only focus some of us might think about. But really, schools today are their own little microcosms. They are the center of communities where they ensure that students are not only challenged academically, not only learning and gaining their educational attainment, but that their health is taken care of, that they're safe in the school building, that their social and emotional needs are being met. And Dr. Feinstay is going to share a little bit from the educator and the principal's perspective. So we're happy to have him on in a few slides. But he can probably elaborate on some more of these issues that are facing schools. And what you'll see is that there's an overlap. The issues that are facing schools are also issues facing children and also can relate back to our health and well-being, hunger and food insecurity. So many schools today, like many organizations, are concerned about their budget and do they have the resources to fund all of the program and professionals that they want to achieve their goals. There's fluctuating enrollment. We see on a national level decreases in public school enrollment, but when you dig into the data, it actually is a little more nuanced. We see some suburban areas where enrollment is increasing, where in rural and urban areas, enrollment is decreasing. So school districts are either dealing with having to close school buildings and consolidate school buildings, or try to expand school buildings or upgrade infrastructure. And a lot of our school buildings today are outdated, and that's both within the school and classroom itself, and as well as in the kitchen with the kitchen equipment. Schools, like many other professions, are facing staffing shortages, both for that classroom teacher as well as the paraprofessional that's assisting the teacher, the front office staff, the custodial staff, the food and nutrition staff, the the bus drivers. Everyone in that building plays an important role in making sure your children are safe and educated, and losing one of those positions can hinder the functioning of the entire school building. Chronic absenteeism, which is defined as missing 10% of the school year, 18 or more school days, is a real problem for schools for a variety of issues. It peaked in 2022 following the COVID-19 pandemic, but many schools are really still struggling with absenteeism or students arriving to school late. And chronic absenteeism obviously is detrimental to that individual student, but it also affects the whole classroom, right? The classroom is its own community, its own little culture, and what may affect one child is going to bleed into the rest of them. Speaking about COVID, the learning loss that occurred during COVID, when we transitioned to a year in most places of virtual learning, is still being felt in the classroom today. We're still seeing test scores come out today saying that some scores are below pre-pandemic levels, and there's still gains to be made. And then obviously, what is happening in the home, what's happening in the larger community, it comes into the school building as well. You know, a child who's struggling with chronic hunger and food insecurity at home, that's going to be brought with him or her into the classroom. And we're seeing that the political environment and what's happening in our communities affects our school buildings as well. We've seen a number of schools transition to virtual learning, or children not going to school due to the immigration policies that are happening within their communities. So while schools may provide a safe haven for students, they are not immune to what is happening around them. In fact, they're very much immersed in the entire community, both the home life of the child as well as the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Likewise, you'll see some of the carryover of what's commonly facing children today. And we're seeing a lot of news articles around bullying and mental health and the impact of social media on children's mental health and their social emotional learning. And we're seeing schools say, we don't always have the resources that we need and the professionals that we need to address this mental health crisis. Obviously, the children themselves are struggling with learning loss in some cases from those COVID years, and then just a resetting of the academic environment. And we've seen a rise in child poverty and a rise in childhood food insecurity over the last few years. You know, during the peak of COVID-19, we had social safety net expanded, where childhood food insecurity actually decreased and was lower than it was in 2024. Right now, we have 14 million children that go to bed every night in this country not knowing where their next meal would come from. 14 million children who are facing chronic hunger, food insecurity. And we know from our friends at Feeding America that about 30% of those children, 30% of those 14 million children who don't have enough food to thrive, don't qualify for federal nutrition assistance programs. So as a society, we say, we see and recognize that your family and your household doesn't have enough resources to nourish yourselves, but yet you make too much money to get a free school lunch. That's not okay. And so we're going to talk with our panelists today about how they are trying to combat many of these issues to make sure that students in their schools and communities have the nourishment that they need to succeed. Next slide, please. So how might food insecurity show up in your classroom? What might it look like? It's not always the lethargic child complaining of a grumbling stomach. It may be that, but it can also show up as food anxiety or this constant worry or preoccupation around food. Maybe you have a child in your classroom who is hoarding food. If you do a share table, they might be going and trying to get all the food off the share table. If there's a classroom event or party, you can see them pocketing food for later because they don't know when their next meal might be. They don't know what's in their pantries and their cabinets and their refrigerators in their own home. It can show up as learning difficulties. We hear from teachers all the time that it takes one hungry, dysregulated child to disrupt an entire classroom. And that really speaks to that culture and that community within the classroom. That food insecurity, we know from decades of research that children can't learn on an empty stomach. And if a child is focused on the hunger in his or her or their belly, it's difficult to focus on the lesson in the front of the classroom. And then it can come out in some other kind of behavior issues that we see, the irritability, the impulsiveness, the aggression. So food insecurity might show up in your classroom and you might not always be aware that it's actually hunger that's causing some of these problems. But thankfully, school meals are part of that solution. We know that school meals, particularly when they're offered to all children at no cost, are one of the most important public health investments we can make in this country, and that school meals, when offered for free to all children, they help to create hunger-free schools, and they really help to ensure that students are set up for a successful school day. So let's talk specifically on what the research says about school breakfast, since it is National School Breakfast Week. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, one more story before I get there. So a few months ago, I was doing a presentation with a bunch of school nutrition professionals, your frontline cafeteria staff, and we were doing an advocacy session. And I handed out cardboard compostable school lunch trays. And I asked them, tell their policymakers, tell their legislators, why are school meals important? Why is school breakfast important? Why is it important that we ensure children have access to healthy school lunch? And the trays had a lot of beautiful, colorful designs on them when I collected them at the end of the session, talking about the school lunch tray being a living textbook and how it teaches children all the components of a healthy meal and the different colorful fruits and vegetables, talking about how children are exposed to new and different items. And then there was this tray, and I'm going to read it right to you. A student one day asked for an apple. I asked, did you have lunch? He said, no, I have no money. I told him it was free, and so was breakfast. From that day forward, he ate breakfast and lunch until he graduated. And this is a really positive story, and I love this story. And I also worry about all of the children who don't say anything, all of the children who might be shamed or embarrassed to say, I don't have money for lunch and I'm hungry. And what happens to them and their trajectory throughout their educational experience. And there's far too many children in our country who don't have access to free breakfast and free lunch who need it. And so that's why we're working here at FRAC and with our panelists today to really kind of flip that script and make school breakfast just a natural part of the school day and school lunch available to everybody. Next slide, please. Now the research on school breakfast. So decades of research have studied the benefits of the school breakfast and lunch program. And when we talk about breakfast specifically, we really know that school breakfast supports not only student health, but also academic achievement. We know that school meals are the healthiest sources of food for most children on a given school day, and that children who participate in the school meal program have improved diet quality, increased intakes of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, dairy, protein. They have higher intakes of what we call micronutrients of public health concern, so your calcium, your vitamin D. That children who participate in school meal program have lower risks of food insecurity, right? That school meals, particularly when they're offered free for all, either through the community eligibility provision or through a state policy, they really not only support that student, but they support the entire household and they stretch household food budgets so that the family is more food secure as well. We also know that students are better able to focus and learn and concentrate. Memory improves, attention improves, attendance improves when children have access to nutritious, healthy school meals. And that school breakfast in particular, robust breakfast programs really support student behavior and academic outcomes, test scores, which is obviously important to many of our educators out there. Next slide, please. But there are still a lot of barriers to the traditional breakfast model. So the traditional breakfast program is one where breakfast is offered before the start of the school day. So children need to arrive to school early to participate. Clearly, this creates a lot of barriers to the child themselves. Children oftentimes are not getting themselves to school. They're dependent on busing or public transportation or an adult in their life to take them to school. Getting to school on time can be a challenge. And I say this from personal experience, having two young children of my own and trying to get to school on time is a challenge. Trying to get there early is an extreme barrier. When breakfast is offered before the start of the school day and often far away in a cafeteria that's separate from where children congregate or hang out, it's far from lockers or first period, you're creating barriers to participation. you're creating a stigma associated with participating. It makes it seem as if school breakfast is only important to those children who need breakfast and not to all children. The cost of school breakfast can prohibit many children from participating. And then there's barriers to the operation, labor, staffing challenges, menu availability, rising food costs, and support. And I really want to highlight support. School nutrition professionals, they know the ins and outs of school breakfast and lunch. They know how to run robust programs. But in order to implement some best practices around breakfast, they need the support of teachers, of principals, of superintendents, of the decision makers within a school system. And they need to get the blessing of a principal to say, yes, let's try a different breakfast model. Let's see how it works and if it helps support our students. And that's why we're excited today to have panelists that are both school nutrition professionals as well as educators to share what really works to bring that breakfast into the classroom. Next slide. And that leads us to our best practices. Healthy school breakfast for all. When we offer school breakfast to all children at no charge, we are reducing stigma and increasing participation. We're raising nutrition equity, almost leveling the nutritional playing field, as you say. So you're eating breakfast in community with your peers. When you have breakfast after the bell, you break those barriers of timing and having to get to school early, and you're making breakfast a natural part of the school day. When you pair these two together, free breakfast that children can consume in community with their classmates, you really get the winning recipe for school breakfast. You're going to get the most participation possible by offering at no cost and allowing children to enjoy it as a natural part of their school day. Next slide, please. When we talk about offering it at no cost, there's a variety of ways schools are doing this. Some schools implement something called Provision 2. Some schools implement a local non-pricing model. Some states, and we'll hear from Stacy Smith in Delaware today, have passed legislation that offers universal free breakfast. But many schools are implementing the community eligibility provision or CEP. And you can see on this slide, we've had tremendous growth in CEP adoption since it first became available nationwide in the 2014-2015 school year. In fact, 1 out of every 2 schools that operate the National School Lunch Program use CEP to offer free breakfast and lunch to all schools. So community eligibility is an option under the National School Lunch Program that allows high need, high poverty schools to offer free breakfast and lunch to all students, regardless of household income. It is key in fighting childhood hunger, and it is an important step on the path towards our ultimate goal of healthy school meals for all. Next slide, please. And here's our map showing healthy school meals for all. Starting this school year, we have 9 states indicated in green that have passed state legislation making free breakfast and lunch a natural part of their school day. We have 3 states and the District of Columbia that you see here in blue that have free school breakfast for all policies. And then the majority of the remaining states, those that are in this gold yellow color, are working towards healthy school meals for all. They're forming coalitions, they're introducing bills in their state legislature that would make school breakfast and lunch free to all students, regardless of household income. The momentum behind this movement is forever growing and increasing. This is a wildly popular policy, regardless of political affiliation, because once communities experience the benefit of free school meals, they don't want to give it up. They recognize what an investment healthy school meals is for children, not just today, not just so a student can pass a spelling test on Friday, but an investment for their future and the future of our society. Next slide, please. And then breakfast after the bell. There are a variety of ways that schools are breaking through those barriers of stigma and timing and location to serve breakfast to students while they're at school. Breakfast in the classroom, just like it sounds, breakfast is delivered and consumed directly in classroom, maybe during morning announcements or during first period when teachers are collecting homework. Grab and go is a model where students will grab a breakfast from a cart or a kiosk and then take it with them to class. And then second chance breakfast, and we'll hear from Eric out in California later, talk about his breakfast program, works really well in middle and high schools where students might start their school day early and they're not quite hungry yet. And then there's an extended break between, say, first and second period or second and third period, where children have the opportunity to go grab a breakfast and eat it with their peers in their next class. The key to any of these models, and they all look different depending on the school, is that children have access to breakfast when they get to school and they're able to eat it in the classroom with their peers. Giving breakfast to students after the start of the school day and allowing them to take the meal into class with them breaks through the majority of the barriers that I identified earlier and drives participation in the program. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there are a variety of different ways that schools are implementing breakfast after the bell models. Back years and years ago, when I first started hearing about this, I would hear this term like kiosk, and I thought it had to be this big fancy cart that you would see on the left-hand side. It doesn't. I ran many school breakfast kiosks. I never had a big fancy cart. I had more of what you see in the middle picture here. And then on the picture on your right, I had a cart, like just a push cart, and you would load it up and you would load up coolers and containers. So don't let equipment be your barrier. We can work with you and figure out ways, connect you with other school nutrition operators to figure out how to make breakfast after the bell work for your school district. Like I said, there's no one perfect model. It's whatever is perfect for your community and however you can get your students the most access to nutritious school breakfast. Next slide, please. And this last little stat here comes from USDA. They shared that over 40% of students who never participated in school breakfast would do so if eating in the classroom was an option. And I think that really speaks to the stigma and peer influence, right? If you feel like you are going to be othered, if you are going to be different from your classmates, from your friends, from your peers, by going to participate in school breakfast by yourself, you are not likely to participate. Once it becomes part of your culture, once a part of a school's culture to say, we support you, we support your endeavors, we support your health, we believe breakfast is an important part of your journey, then more children will participate. It just becomes part of the norm. Next slide. Excellent. Okay, so we're done listening to me ramble and ramble. I'm going to invite my panelists to come off camera. I have some pre-planned questions that we're going to guide through the discussion today, but as I mentioned, for our audience members out there, if you have any questions for any of our panelists at any time, please enter them in the Q&A function. Now to introduce them, we have Miss Stacy Smith. Stacy is the supervisor of child nutrition services at Cape Henlopen. Am I saying that correct,
You got
Stacy?
it. Yes.
Yeah, school district in Delaware. She's also the president-elect of Delaware SNA. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you.
Also
Great to be
representing
here.
our school nutrition operations side of things, we have Mr. Eric Span. Eric is the director of nutrition services at Sweetwater Union High School District in California. Hi, Eric.
How you doing there?
And then representing all principals nationwide, completely taking on the principal voice for all of us here, we have Dr. Joshua Fine, the principal at Flower Hill Elementary School in Montgomery County Public Schools in Maryland. Good afternoon, Dr. Fine.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. We're really excited. So for our audience, I have already shared with our panelists that we like to keep this conversational. So we want this to be engaging and entertaining. So again, enter questions in the Q&A if you want it. And then to our panelists, just feed off of each other. You know, as someone shares something that relates to your own experience, jump right in. We want to have this be a really open discussion. But just to set the stage and get us started, I'm going to have each of you tell us a little bit more about your school or about your district, what is unique to your community and the children that you serve. And I will start with Dr. Fine as the principal.
Great. Thank you so much, Erin. And again, great to be here today and good to see everyone today for this important topic. My name is Josh Fine, and I'm the principal of Flower Hill Elementary School, where we all belong at the Hill, in Montgomery County, Maryland, in Gaithersburg, Maryland, more specifically. My community is very diverse. Forbes magazine rated Gaithersburg one of the most diverse city in the country 2 years in a row. I'm a Title I school. About 68% of my students qualify for free and reduced meals. We have over 50% of our student population are Latinos. We have a third of our students who are emerging multilingual learners, about 25% African American, 10% Asian, with a distinct Muslim community within that population. And we're a walking community. We have 460 students, but only 3 buses. So many of our students sort of live in the community that surrounds the school. Food insecurity, well, let me say this. I joined the school in July of 2020, which was a very interesting time to join as a school leader. And one of the things that I noticed pretty quickly was our battle with food insecurity during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we have done a number of things at Flower Hill, both around our free breakfast and lunch programs, but also connecting with district partners to battle food insecurity in a really meaningful way. So again, I look forward to this discussion today, and just thank you all for having me.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Fine, you don't know this, but I live in Silver Spring. And so I often like to say that we are the most diverse small city because I think we battle back and forth.
I agree. I actually
And
live in Silver Spring too, so I get a little bit of both. Yeah.
It's one of the key reasons my husband and I love raising our children here and sending them to Montgomery County Public Schools. And then as a step back, Dr. Fine is representing a singular school, but for the district level and for any operators out there, Flower Hill is part of one of the top 50 largest school districts in the nation. Montgomery County Public Schools has over 200 schools, I believe 160,000 students, and nearly 200 different languages spoken in our students' homes. So it's definitely a different operation when you think about it from the district level as you're thinking about menuing items and creating menus and then how it filters down. And I see my food service directors going, oh yeah, that's an operation. So Eric, let's pass it over to you to learn a little bit more about what you're doing out in Sweetwater.
Oh, thank you very much. So we are around 36,000 students. We were at 42,000 when I started almost 12 years ago. So we have, been hit with some decline in enrollment. We also have a very diverse population. We have from Latino to Asian American and Pacific Islanders to white, Black students, Asian students as well. I like to say what makes us unique is we are like the southernmost kind of cities around Southern California. So I always say when they ask where is my location, I say we're just south of San Diego and just north of Tijuana. So we represent 4 cities that are very, close to the border here in Chula Vista, San Diego, National City, Imperial Beach. And our population of students has been really, really interesting for us because it's also split economically. So we have a freeway that kind of runs in between and separates the district from east and west. West Chula Vista tends to be more of the kind of older community where some of our older schools are. And then as we push a little bit more east of that Freeway 805, it's a much more affluent neighborhood. So we kind of see a little bit of difference in food preferences. We see a little bit of difference in participation. We're currently participating around 52, 53% in our meal program. We're serving around 12,000, 13,000 breakfasts a day, around 15 to 17,000 lunches a day. And depending on the school site, we do all that in 30 minutes. And so we're very proud of the operation that we do. Anybody that knows us knows we're kind of coming back from COVID, where prior to COVID, we were strictly, probably 80% speed scratch. And we're just kind of moving ourselves right back up to about 42, 43%. But we're trying to do good things for our students. We do farms. We do a lot of local produce that we buy here in California. And so we have a little bit of good, I say I like our program and the opportunity we get to take care of 4 different cities of students. So a little bit about us.
Thanks, Eric. And I think we'll mention this in a little bit too. But what's unique I find about your district too is that it's only secondary school students. You
Yes.
do not have elementary schools in your district, right? Only
No.
middle and high schools.
Yeah, it's funny I didn't mention that because I love that part of it. Uh, you were talking about that earlier, but yeah, it's just middle and high school students. And so it offers us the freedom to offer a variety of foods that would probably be a little bit more difficult to offer elementary students. Our kids are a little bit more aware of allergies they may have. We use our technology to identify students who have allergies. We do a lot of signage, kind of identifying what may have an allergen in the food. But I do like that we get to kind of do a little bit more advanced, kind of menuing like ceviche and things like that
Mm.
in our school district.
No one's asking for help to open up the juice containers. Huh?
Yeah, like nobody's asking that. No.
That's a lot, takes a lot of time in a lunchroom sometimes.
I know. Yeah.
And
Bummer.
Stacy, coming from Delaware, share a little bit about your district, and then I'm going to plug you to mention your legislation too on universal free breakfast.
Sure, absolutely. So here in Delaware, or at Cape and Lopez, we're a little bit smaller than you guys. So we have about 6,900 students. We're on the upswing though. So we've been, I think since I've been here in the last 13 years, I would say we've doubled in the quantity of students that we have here. So we operate 10 buildings. So we have a high school, 3 middle schools, and 5 elementary schools. And then we also have our Sussex Consortium, and they serve students from pre-K, 2-year-olds, all the way up to 21. A lot of kids with special needs, such as autism. We have a fantastic autism program in that building. It makes us a little bit more unique. And then we also are a balance of a seasonal resort population and then a lot of longstanding rural families. We're a farming community on the one side and then a beach town on the other. So, that mix requires us to be really adaptable, and we have to create some strong partnerships with our farm community as well. We have a deep commitment to equity here, and that plays out in those, two roles of the beach town versus the farm town. And we also we represent a resort economy when you look at it that way, and an agricultural economy. So we also have to be cognizant of that geographic span for those two areas. We're also culturally diverse in the fact that we are about a third minority, and so we, take that into consideration with everything that we do, all of our planning. We have an identified student percentage that's about 33.39%, and that allows us to operate fully under community eligibility provision. So our entire district is free meals for breakfast and for lunch. And that's been fantastic for removing that stigma that you talked about earlier. It reduces some of the administrative burden of processing applications, and it also ensures that every child, regardless of their income status, is having that consistent access to their meals. So, again, when we're looking at that range in our economic status, we have anywhere from 28% in some buildings to 42.15% of our ISP. And so when we account for what would have potentially been qualified by applications, that number jumps us up to 54% of our students as eligible. So in
I'm
terms
sorry,
of,
Stacey, just to clarify, so you are doing CEP
we are.
district-wide
Mhm.
with a single group cluster at 33% ISP?
Yes, that's
And you
correct.
have
Just
seen
over
that the
33%.
increase in participation helps to cover the cost of that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've seen a huge jump in participation, from the CEP for us, and then also from that House legislation that we're going to talk about here in a minute. So statewide, we've seen big jumps. So really happy to
Huge.
see that.
That's great because that's a relatively lower ISP level for most schools.
Yes. Yeah,
So
we
really,
just peeked in there.
yeah, that's great. Okay, so let's transition for a minute to your state legislation since I kind of teed that up earlier. Do you want to share a little
Absolutely.
bit about what Delaware has recently passed?
Sure. Let me just, since we're jumping down. Okay, so just a little overview of Delaware's universal free breakfast law. So in 2024, we had House Bill 125, which was signed by Governor John Carney. And that put into place a process to eliminate the reduced price meal fees for all eligible students. So if you were eligible for reduced price meals, you got them for free. And the state would then reimburse the district for costs that weren't covered by federal funds. So that was a big step forward, but it wasn't yet the universal for all students. Then we went to House Bill 91, and that is what established the universal free breakfast for all public school students statewide. And that was regardless of income. You didn't have to be qualified. And that started up this year, 25-26. So that expanded access beyond CEP schools, and that included our non-CEP buildings. And we had, I think, there was a big coalition, obviously. There was a lot of collaboration to make this happen between, Delaware School Nutrition Association. We had our DASA organization that was pivotal in it, and the district supervisors, as well as a few legislative champions. There was a lot of communication between our district leaders and our policymakers, specifically, Amy Beam, she's the Delaware Nutrition Program Manager, and her team provided a lot of cost projections to help get us to the point where we are. So they were able to have some clear financial modeling, and that helped address concerns maybe from the governor and legislators as far as, is this feasible? And they did find that it was. Initially, the push was to have breakfast and lunch. They backed off of the lunch. They implemented the breakfast due to cost concerns. And then we're hoping to be able to show this success that we're having with these breakfast programs, that it's creating a sustainable pathway forward.
Thank you for that. That's great. Yes, and shout out to Amy Bean and her team and on all the state agencies who are really so instrumental in making these programs work. And thank you, Amy, for sharing all your data with me all the time. I appreciate that. We're seeing this trajectory rather that states are going towards healthy school meals for all. They want universal free school meals, but they don't go from like 0 to 100, right? And so there's been this momentum lately that they're testing the waters that say, or a step towards healthy school meals for all is universal free breakfast. So we see this in now Delaware, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, the District of Columbia has a free breakfast program. And even states like New Jersey are discussing, okay, our ultimate goal is healthy school meals for all. Until we get there, universal free breakfast is that next step. So thank you for sharing that in Delaware. Let's talk a little bit about how breakfast looks in your schools. And I shared this with you prior to today's call, but I don't remember school breakfast, and I'm not that old. I don't remember school breakfast being a huge thing when I was a kid growing up. It was there. The program was definitely created for decades, I will point out, when I was in elementary school. But I don't remember it as much as I remember lunch. I have vivid memories of the lunch line, the smells, what we served, what we ate, certain cookies that I won't say the name brand, but they were delicious. But breakfast, I don't remember being a big thing. And now that I've worked in child nutrition for well over 15 years, I've had the privilege of seeing so many different breakfast programs. And the really cool thing is that they are different. They are different based off your students, your teachers, your school layout, your operations. And so let's go back and see what they look like in your school. So Dr. Fine, I'll start with you in Flower Hill. From a student's perspective or an educator's perspective, how does your school day start and what does school breakfast look like?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I really think the start of the day is so important, as you were mentioning during your presentation, to make sure that breakfast is provided for all and in a time where everyone can access it in a comfortable way. So what we did at Flower Hill is extend the length of our arrival period. In an elementary school, the arrival period is, there's many things going on, right? You have students arriving by feet, buses arriving, we have a car loop as well. So we opened up that time to a 20-minute period of time. And how we describe it to our kindergarten parents when they join us, when they join our community, is when you go to work, you very rarely get right to work. As adults,
I do. I'm on the call. I start right away, guys.
Even as adults, we need a moment. We need a moment to put down our stuff, to get acclimated to our space, to make a cup of coffee or to have something to eat, to chat with our colleagues for just a moment, and then to get our day started. So you could say that the instructional schedule starts at 9 a.m., but if your kids only arrived in the building 5 or 10 minutes before, that's really not happening anyway, regardless what it says on paper. So we really open the time and we give our community 20 minutes to come in, to get settled, to eat, and the breakfast looks like like trays that are delivered to each classroom within the classroom. So we don't have students going to the cafeteria to get breakfast. It's delivered to them in their classroom. And then our teachers are really knowledgeable around the requirements that are necessary to serve correct MFFA breakfast. And so that's how it's done. There's a share table inside the classroom. Breakfast is offered to every single student. And then teachers know that if a student is tardy, that they can go right to breakfast. And usually, actually, that responsibility lives with our front office. So if a student comes in after the bell, the first thing that is asked is, would you like some breakfast and what would you like for lunch, to ensure that those orders are captured and they can grab some breakfast and come in to the classroom, after they arrive. So I think that the piece around that extended period of time in the classroom for students to get settled not only meets the needs of students as far as breakfast for all, but really meets learning needs as well, and community needs as well. It's sort of just best practice. So as principals, we're always thinking about the learning and the instructional time that we have because it is precious. But in order to really do it with fidelity, that morning settling time I find to be so important.
Thank you so much for sharing all that. There's so much that you said. I mean, and I think relating it back to like the start of our workday, one makes me feel a little bit better about the start of my workday, and how much I need to ease into it, let's say, with multiple beverages around me at all times. Um, but I think that makes it relatable. And then you also talk so much about it's a community effort. I mean, it's you have your school nutrition professionals that are preparing the meal according to the regulations, delivering the meal, but then you have your teachers on board doing what we call point of service and accountability. And there sounds like they are figuring out, is there a fruit component and all of the different, and that requires constant communication and training and ongoing to ensure compliance. And then even to have your front office staff say, have you had breakfast today? I mean, it just sends such a message to your students that one, breakfast is important. You know, you need to start your day ready to learn. And two, we're here to make sure that you have that resource that we so value. So I think there's just so much you have going on at Flower Hill that really is best practices all around.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to what you said too is you're right. It does sort of take this technical training of what makes a breakfast and what doesn't make a breakfast and to have a share table, et cetera. But it also really takes a belief system that our students are important, that they have challenges that may or may not be within our control, but we can support in every way we can, and that food insecurity is a barrier to education, period. And it's all of our jobs to contribute and to battle food insecurity. So my teachers, our front office staff, they know that they're often volunteering at our other food markets after school that we have for the community as well. So it's that belief system that I think is so important, not only within the moment, but then sort of builds this community that our students matter.
Ah, thank you. You'll be back. I'll have you do another webinar sometime soon. All right, Eric, let's see over in California with your middle and high schoolers, how are you doing it? And just, I'm sure many on the call know, but California was first in the nation at the end of those COVID-19 waivers that had allowed all of us to serve free meals to all students. California was the first state in the nation to say, we are continuing this. We are doing healthy school meals for all. We are not letting this benefit go. Our children need it. Our communities need it. So kudos to California for really leading the charge. Maine came in, I think, within minutes as being number two. It was not very short, so not very long after. And as I shared earlier, now we have 9 states across the nation and the most of the remaining ones working towards that goal. So Eric, tell us a little bit about what breakfast looks like in your schools.
Sure. First, I want to offer Dr. Fine. He should move to California. We'd love to have
No, you don't get them.
because no, but he touched on something that's important to us in our district, and that's the community and the support of our students. And so our breakfast, because of middle and high school district being a high school district, our students have now, because of California laws being passed, have moved the day back. And so we realized that what was happening is that the kids are still getting to school at the same time because parents still have to work at the same time. And so what we've done is we started to open up early breakfast, right? So they can come to the cafeteria before school. Because they're getting dropped off 7:30. Cafeterias are open and serving. And then we have on our model, it's a little bit of grab and go, but it's definitely after the school bell. And so in California, people don't maybe not know this, but we don't really have a lot of spaces in buildings for kids to sit down and eat. It's really for us where kids are grabbing food, going somewhere on campus. There might be a pavilion out to keep the rain off of them during some inclement weather. But really, they come in, they go to a POS station that we have across our campuses. And so that grab and go concept is also still in effect because we're serving after the bell. So it's a 15-minute passing period. But at some sites, I may have 10 or 15 stations available where those kids can go anywhere across the campus, grab something to eat on their way to class. And what we found is that we have been able to, with that model, feed more students because they're already there. They've already had a class under their belt. Now they're hungry. They know they're going to be passing until it's time to lunch. And so we then create menu items that fit portability for them. But we also have moved more to protein for breakfast away from like sugary cereals, sugary muffins, and things like that, because we want our kids, we know high schoolers need more sleep than people may realize. We know that middle schools need that amount of sleep too, but they also need that protein that's really going to help them to be successful in the classroom. Because what we don't want is them, hey, I just woke up, now I got to get rushed to school because mom and dad have to get to work. And then we give them something that's sugary, and by the time they're in class, they're crashing. So we have really focused on providing high protein items to our students, from like chicken and biscuits to burritos that, we do machaca, again, where we're located. Our population, they love that. We, chorizo and egg burritos, but they're portable, they're tasty, they're hot. And so that's where my focus is with our students, is how do we get more hot breakfast into our students? We also have a farm on one of our campuses where right now we have about 200 chickens. The eggs come into the program. That becomes a part of a breakfast sandwich. And then again, it's portable. Students get that protein, and it's also, from our school district. So that time to eat for us is really important. But we only have, 10 to 15 minutes for breakfast. And we just got to be fast. We got to be quick, but it's also got to be something that the kids want to eat.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's really, and we saw this in School Nutrition Association released their recent trends report, had data on this. I've seen research briefs over the last year. As we know, school meals are already the healthiest source of food for children across the country. And as we work to continuously make them healthier, right, as we always continue to do that, we need to break down access barriers and operational barriers. And so what School Nutrition Association Trends Report found, what research has found over the last year, is that to further improve the quality of school meals, we need to invest in the programs. We need to support local food purchasing and healthy school meals for all. That schools that either operate CEP or operate under a healthy school meals for all policy and are able to just feed all children at no charge to the individual child, it creates the economies of scale that's needed. It improves labor productivity. It streamlines the service itself. It reduces administrative red tape in CEP schools, right? And when you couple that with like farm to school funding, then you see schools do more scratch cooking and are able to really partner with the local producers. So as we continuously work to make menus that are student driven and reflect the cultures that they serve, we need to make it easier for students to access those meals and easier for operators to run the programs. Stacy, can you share a bit about what breakfast looks like in your district?
Absolutely. I'm so excited that you have farms there, by the way, Eric. I think that's the neatest thing ever. And might have to be on my bucket list next. But we have a huge variety of models that we operate. Our theory is to meet them where they're at. It's really tough when you don't have that buy-in. So how can we get people to the step of breakfast in the classroom without steps, baby steps to get there? And I think we've seen by the two buildings in our district that are operating breakfast in the classroom that this is the most successful model. But once that principal jumped in with both feet and encouraged me, because I did have some trepidation as well, that's when we saw that breakfast in the classroom was going to be the way to go, without a doubt. You know, the numbers went up. It reduced the stigma of having to go down to the cafeteria to get breakfast. The kids were eating together. And I think there's a lot of learning and growing that happens during that time when you're modeling, you're seeing other children eating. You're not feeling like you're singled out because maybe you're considered the poor kid that has to go down to the cafeteria to get a meal. So I think that this can be in conjunction with curriculum, and we can tie it right in as part of the daily routine. This is just matter of fact. It's something that we do, and we're going to have breakfast today together. We do have some grab and go models, which are more in our middle schools and our high schools. And this year we branched off to have different grab and go locations throughout the building so that, you know, if they're coming in from the parent side of the building versus the bus side, we're getting them wherever they are. And then they still also have the option to eat in those cafeterias as well, just going through the line if they want to sit down, have a little social time while they enjoy their meals. So, we have second chance breakfast, which we're doing in a couple of our elementary schools as well as in our middle and high school. So if you come in late, we've installed some vending machines at our middle and high schools, and they can go to a vending machine or always to one of our cashiers to get another meal. But we've also provided some meals right there in the office space as well. So if a child comes in, they're late for school, they can be issued a meal immediately to take to the classroom with them. So,
That's
and of
great.
course, we have our traditional cafeteria service model for anyone that wants it.
I mean, I think your key about meeting people where they are, meeting schools where they are, is just, I mean, with everything that we do, right? We got to adjust the model. So, Dr. Fine, Eric and Stacy and I were talking a little prior to the call, and something that we were sharing is, you know, we have been doing this work for years. I do a lot of presentations talking to school nutrition professionals about alternative breakfast models. They're not new. Right. I mean, Maryland's implemented, you referred to Maryland Meals for Achievement, which is a state policy that provides free in-classroom breakfast for high poverty schools. That program started in 1998, right? So these are not new models. Food service professionals, they know this, but they are not the decision makers within a school, right? That's the principal, that's the superintendent. What would you recommend? How can we share this message of school breakfast and the importance of bringing breakfast into the classroom or part of the normal school day to educators who are inundated with requests, overly busy, and probably do not have enough time to respond? So, what would be some key things we should be sharing?
Excellent. I'm really glad you asked this question, actually, because this was something that I wanted to uplift and really shouts out my district, Montgomery County Public Schools. Montgomery County Public Schools ensures that as a part of their leadership development program for assistant principals and principals, that they visit our food and nutrition headquarters. And as you mentioned earlier, it's quite an operation. We have 160,000. I think we're the 11th or 12th largest district in the country. So it's quite an operation. And when you go there, it's similar to being a principal on a call like this one, to be honest. You learn sort of what goes on behind the scenes and the seriousness and the science behind it, that this is in itself a large endeavor that really takes an amount of knowledge and experience that as principals, we wouldn't get just in our, leadership journey. So that visit stays with us for a long time. It's a classic photo op with us with the bonnets on, and everybody gets together and sees it. But it also really stays with us around the seriousness of this work and provides us with information to answer parent questions and staff questions moving forward. And so much so that we just had our MMFA evaluation as a staff, and I had the idea of bringing our leadership team to the production facility as well, because it just makes it all more real. And I'm not sure the average educator understand just what goes into making these meals happen, both the physical process of it and the ingredients and diversity of the meals, but also the knowledge, research, and science behind this process, that it isn't new, that this research has existed for some time, and there are some established best practices within the sector. So I think that exposure is just so important. And I know for me personally, is long lasting. That one visit really gave me the perspective that I needed to lead with meals in mind.
I think that is not what I was expecting you to say. And I love that answer because I think as a former operator, I think about if I had a complaint from a parent or a community member, what would I do? I would invite them into the cafeteria, right? I would say, come see the operation. Like we're an open door. Like come see what I'm serving your student. Come see what their options are. And that resolves mostly every issue, right? Because it becomes a discussion and an understanding. Um, and so I never actually, one, I never knew that Montgomery County Public Schools had principals come tour their central production facility, which is massive, and a very interesting operation to understand all the ins and outs of it. But I just love that, like, come learn with us, and we will show you what we're doing here. Eric and Stacy, what has worked for you in trying to get principals on board, or maybe if you had somebody who was saying, we don't need to be doing this?
I think I would agree that it's communication and demonstration, like showing that we can do this, that it's achievable. But sitting down, I mean, we've had sit downs with custodians and management teams, and what are your challenges, and talking those challenges out to make sure that we can accommodate for them, and weigh it out. What's more important. When we're looking at the needs of a child. When we look at that with a realistic viewpoint of priorities, I think we all end up getting on the same page with it. I mean, I think I always refer to this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. She says, "You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience, and when you really stop to look fear in the face, and that you must do the thing you think you cannot do." And I feel like that's where we're at. We always think that this is unachievable, and until someone's shown us that we can do it, till we're able to walk through and actually see with our own eyes and see in the numbers that it's happening and that we're making it work. I think then you share that information and you get them to see it, and it becomes achievable.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to step on her with that, but I really like that, right? Because a lot of times we may be afraid to do that kind of out of the box thinking. And so I just start my day with there's no box, and I'm going to do everything I can to bring our program to the people. And so we meet with principals, we meet with them and their PLCs, we talk to them, we sample food with them. I answer all kind of questions about where the food comes from. We sample food with students. We want to, before an item makes it onto the menu, we need to have multiple school sites and multiple students agree that they like the product. We run the product, we test and see if that actually works. But then our greatest, I wouldn't say like not challenge, but when we create champions from parents, right? And so when we started to operate and serving food to the parents in some of their meetings, and we were sampling food, and they talk to us about what their kid is saying. Well, Johnny came home. He said, "There's nothing in the cafeteria. The food's terrible. Give me some money for lunch." And then we take, "Hey, here's what we serve Johnny." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, Johnny's just trying to scam so he can buy some ice cream," right? Because and it's just really just kind of being, as you mentioned earlier too, Aaron, that open door, like come and see what we do. But here we're going to come to you. So if you're a principal, you got coffee with the parents, we'll come in, we'll serve those parents at your site. And one of my greatest things that I really, really love that we've done, because I say this for me, is I was a very difficult person, and this was during the kind of like Meatless Monday, craze that was like hitting across the country, like Meatless Monday, and it's like, wait a minute, if I take one day and I only serve vegan or vegetarian options, what about all the other students who may want to eat? And so I was very reluctant to kind of just take a day. But as we started to get more and more students who would ask us, "Hey, we like more vegetarian, we like more vegan," and then I can explain to them what an actual slot on the menu looks like, what that slot on the menu actually has to drive in regards to revenue for us. But if you come, I'll put it on the menu, but you got to support it to be on the menu. And so we went from actually doing that like once or twice a week to every day there's a vegan or vegetarian item on our menu for breakfast and lunch because those kids advocated for it, but they didn't just ask for it, they support it on the menu. And so we just try to talk to kids. And I like, go back to the earlier conversation that Dr. Fine mentioned that I really loved about how you talk about when kids come in late or, how you're making life work for them is you're treating them like people.
Yes.
They have decision making processes for themselves. They want to be in charge of what they eat. And so for us, how we advertise the menu, how we've created our own brand that we talk about for Sweetwater Nutrition. We have our own logo. We have our own vehicles that we put out that, our trucks when they're driving through the community have our logo. We have different types of enclosures that have the school site logo. So we're always trying to push our brand forward. But then the other part is that we have to deliver on the quality of the food. And that's something that when I go out and if I see that we didn't meet something the way we are, we should, that's a conversation with that site. And we want to make sure that every time when it's at one school, that burgers at one school supposed to look like the burger at the next school. So that's kind of where that restaurant experience that I have, I think for us has been helpful.
That's great. Thank you. We are at the hour, and this has been such a fantastic discussion. I really appreciate all of you taking your time out of your busy, busy days to share with us. We did have one question come in through the chat that asked about your breakfast menus. So what I would say is to the individual in the chat, if you want to email me, and then I can connect you with Eric or Stacy or even Dr. Fine and the food service department over at Montgomery County. We can share those email addresses, and so you guys can see those menus, or I would be asking menus and production records and all of the good back end, how your health department views everything. So you get all of your documents that you need to implement that recipe. But a big thank you to Dr. Fine, to Eric Span, to Stacy Smith. Thank you so much for supporting your students into school breakfast. Have a wonderful National School Breakfast Week, and we will chat soon. Bye,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, Erin.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Take
everybody.
care.
For having me. Thank you.